Hello and welcome to another learning about the history of Japan reaction stream, I guess we'll call it. But yeah, we are gonna start the Sengoku Jidai today, the Warring State. Maybe like one of the most famous, if not the most famous, period of Japan, right? Period where all the samurai clans are fighting for control of the country. Obviously, so far we've learned a lot and we've actually seen the build up to this, which makes it so much more interesting, right? Because for a long time, you know, in anime, manga, and different pieces of media, I've heard of Sengoku Jidai. But you know, I've never got the full context, especially not like what led to it. You know, you always know that like the country goes to shit, all the clans fight each other, and that's about the gist of it, right? Like you don't really know how it comes to it, but you know, with all the stream we've done over the last few weeks, you know, I would say things really start with the Heian period, but then especially with like, you know, eventually with the shogunate in the Kamakura and Muromachi period, right? The samurai getting more and more powers, then giving more and more power to like individual family in individual region. You know, it was an inevitability that things would turn out into massive fighting. And yeah, again, I've always known like, you know, bits and pieces. I've played stuff like, you know, the visual novel Sengoku Rounds, right, which is like an alternative history parody anime version of the Three Kingdoms. I've played a mod called Sokuo on the Three Kingdoms on Sengoku Jidai from Mountain Blade Battle. But again, you know, I've never really like gotten the actual full history. So that's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna watch all of it from a channel called The Shogunate. Thank you, Nobik, for recommending this. At first, I was only planning to do like a 3-hour video by Kings and General, but then I was told you should check out the Shogunate video, and they have a lot of video. I think there's like 60 plus that are about the Sengoku Jidai. Yeah, 64 episodes, or 5 I guess. And then I also have like a bunch of videos about different clans, which I guess is the history of like some of the different clans from the conflict. And I think we'll be watching that as well. Really, I want like an ultra complete history of the conflict. You know, this time I really want to know about it. So yeah, this is obviously gonna take many streams. I don't know how long we're gonna do today. We'll see. But yeah, obviously you'll find a link to the playlist of all the videos from the Shogunate in the description. Do check it out, obviously, and thank you to them for making it. Seems like this project took them years. Like, first video is 6 years ago, and then I think the last Samurai Clan video was like 3 days ago, so they're still posting around all this. Which again, I always like this kind of YouTube project, the kind of like ultra in-depth history project about something specific. You know, overall video are kind of nice, like a 2-hour video about the conflict, but I think something that goes this in-depth will be mighty interesting. But yeah, also link to my Discord, stream amount, Patreon, as always if you're interested. What else can I say? I've seen again, like, you know, I know many names, you know, the Takeda, the Uesugi, Oda Nobunaga. I know Oda Nobunaga gets betrayed, then some guy takes over, I think, is it Ieyasu? I think. Well, one guy takes over, and then some other guy betray him, and then that third guy is the guy that finished unifying Japan. That's kind of like what I know. As far as like the details of like the battles and all that, I don't really think I know much. Yeah. Because again, it's always referenced, but you know, I don't think I've ever seen like a full adaptation of, you know, what happens, which is kind of surprising. I mean, this would probably make a pretty great anime, right? But yeah, I guess this is what we're gonna be watching. By the way, last time at the end of the Muromachi period, I did skip part of the video we were watching when they were talking about the Onin War, because it seems like the second video in this playlist will be talking about it. Might be something we go back to eventually once we finish the chronological history, and we can go to stream where we do kind of whatever I feel like learning more about. But yeah, again, I think on YouTube this is probably like the most in English YouTube. Maybe in Japanese YouTube there's more in-depth, but the more in-depth series about this, so yeah, thank you again, Nobik, for suggesting it. Okay, you know what, real quick before starting I wanted to see if there's more media about the Sengoku period I've done. Anime about Sengoku period. Dororo, it's Sengoku period really. Pretty good anime, I quite enjoyed it. Sengoku Basara I tried once but never finished. Yeah, okay. I guess not that much. Oh, Sword of the Stranger, that's one. Actually. Yeah, Stranger Muko Aden. That's a great movie. Really enjoyed that one. Dororo, I think is pretty cool. Inuyasha, I've watched some of it. Oda Nobunaga no Yabo is one, but again, didn't even mention that one because I don't think it counts. It's like gender bender Oda Nobunaga, so he's a cute girl. And yeah, I think it's very, it's not accurate, I think. I guess there's quite a few anime from the period, though I'm sure most of them are like not telling the actual story. Yeah, okay. That's about it then for me. Sword of the Stranger might be the most like, Dororo is cool, but it's fantasy to an extent. Sword of the Stranger is like an original story, but it's an actual straightforward samurai story. So it might be the most fitting, maybe. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, enough yapping, we're here to learn, so let's do it. Here we go. So, the first video, the Shogunate and Samurai of the 1400 Sengoku Jidai Part 1 by the Shogunate 6 years ago.
Throughout the previous series, we saw how Japan underwent a vast evolution as the shogun and the samurai came to rule the country.
YouTube doesn't let me put on subtitles, that's a shame. I always like having English subs even if I understand what's being said, right? It is what it is. Sometimes YouTube is weird. People tell me in the comments all the time, why did you not enable subtitles? And it's not my choice. Sometimes YouTube just doesn't let you do it.
Now, in the 1400s, we find ourselves in the midst of the Muromachi period, when the Ashikaga shogunate ruled from Kyoto. Although we know how we got to this point, let us now take a closer look into what Japan and the samurai actually looked like during the 15th century.
So this might be some recap of what we've seen from the BUDN channel, but I think I won't skip anything to see how it's presented on this channel and, get the full story once again, even though this might recap a bit of what we've learned from Muromachi. Comme ça, le bateau. Nice music. I think earlier I was confusing Toyotomi with Hideyoshi. I just forget which one is the one that assassinates Nobunaga. The Sengoku Jidai. Ineffective shogunate.
In the early years of the 1400s, Japan was under the control of Shogun Yoshimochi, who governed from his lavish palace of Hananogosho on Muromachi Street in Kyoto.
I still find it funny that the period is called just after a street, that they didn't have a better name.
Yoshimochi had the unfortunate honor of ruling after his father, the great Ashikaga Yoshimitsu, who can be remembered as a shrewd and expert politician, as he saw to the disestablishment of Go-Daigo's southern imperial court in 1392. Yoshimochi, on the other hand, was no great politician or powerful figurehead. Instead, he and the Ashikaga shoguns who would follow would usher in the grand decline of their power. This was due to a couple of reasons. One being that many clans did not view the Ashikaga shogunate with the same level of respect that they had viewed the Kamakura shogunate. Most clans had owed their loyalty to the Kamakura shogunate because they had been given their land by the Kamakura. But now that the Ashikaga were responsible for the distribution and redistribution of land to all of the clans, they had little need to ever do so. This of course meant that many clans had no reason to feel bound to the Ashikaga shogunate, causing the various lords to have little reason to respect or follow the orders of the shogun. Early on, The shogunate attempted to remedy this issue by waging war against clans
Elenobik, thanks again for telling me about the shogunate.
who still supported the southern court. The Ashikaga shogunate directly ruled
Oh, I guess, as he says it, the shogunate. I like the way he says it. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. I don't know. The shogunate.
roughly 1/4 of the country and attempted to use their strength to finish off the southern court loyalists. This would allow them to gift freshly claimed land to clans who aided them during war, thus creating a respectable level of loyalty and stability. Unfortunately, these attempts against southern court loyalists would prove somewhat ineffective and costly, making the authority of the Ashikaga shogunate seem weak. Still, what power was absent in the capital was more than made up for by the vast expansion of art and culture throughout the Muromachi period.
Ali videos noticed the difference with his present voice, yeah? I mean, if my old channel wasn't gone, it is the same with me, and I'm sure most YouTubers, yeah? It's not even, that your voice changed in terms of like muting or something. It's more like getting used to do a YouTuber voice, talking more clearly and with more volume, yeah? Faster.
While the arts flourished in the stagnant capital, the clans, however, began to transform. Shugo, or provincial clan lords, who were military governors that were appointed by the Kamakura shogunate, were now beginning to view their positions as more autonomous, due to the apparently weak grip of the shogun. Many Shugo began mustering larger armies in aims to consolidate their land holdings. Of course, many of which also started to grow ambitious as well.
Of course.
Coveting lands from their neighboring clans, knowing full well that
From like everything we've learned so far, it all started from it wasn't even AI, it was maybe like Asuka or Nara period, right? Where the government started the Shoin thing of giving like rice farm to the peasants, and eventually things weren't really working out, so they fully gave them away as like, it is your right to own this land and give it to your next generation. And once they started being a thing, like you had like the little more power for like some of the people who control multiple shrines or whatever. I guess that was like the origin of it, and there was already like hundreds and hundreds of years before, like the government starting to give power to the smaller people, eventually leading to the samurai clan. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. The top 10 myths of Sengoku Jidai is a good watch.
Ashikaga shogunate
We might watch that eventually.
able to stop their increasing might. It would only be a matter of time before new wars between clans would erupt throughout the country. It would be these new powerful and ambitious Shugo that would begin to be known as the first of the daimyo, the feudal clan lords who would one day vie for control of the country. Clan lords who would one day vie for control of the country. However, a failsafe had been initiated by the shogunate early on, making it so that the Shugo would need to maintain a residence in Kyoto, limiting their ability to actually act out against the shogun's authority. Yet this too began to fall apart in time, as the Shugo would soon appoint relatives or retainers to take up their positions in Kyoto instead. This allowed the clans to continue growing in strength. Throughout the 1400s, further evolution came in the face of the samurai themselves. One of the primary changes being in the way of the sword. During the Mongol invasions of the late 1200s, the samurai found their tachi to be somewhat ineffective in several scenarios against their Mongol enemies.
We just learned about this in a video yesterday. Perfect timing. Yeah, the evolution of the tachi to the uchi katana. Yeah.
The first issue was that the tachi sword was not able to easily cut through the boiled leather armor of the Mongol infantry. The second issue was the length of the tachi, becoming problematic when fighting in close proximity. These dilemmas, coupled with other minor annoyances, paved the way for the development of new, shorter blades. This of course meant the introduction
so the shorter one, the washiki, was it?
Of the katana, and later the wakizashi. By the 1400s, these two swords were quickly becoming widely used by the samurai class, as they would become a staple of samurai status. Armor in Japan was also evolving, as the early styles began changing to allow for further flexibility and protection, while at the same time allowing for greater ornamentation and distinction.
Looking absolutely fabulous seems to have been a priority. If this art isn't really, I don't think it is like exaggerated, right? There's still some armors left to this day that really shows that this is how they looked. They really wanted to look fabulous.
Which would in turn see to better recognition for specific lords and samurai. By the 1460s, the progression of the daimyo and the samurai would finally lead to the inevitable, a war which would set off nearly 150 years of conflict. However, the cause of this war would in fact come from a most unforeseen source. In the next video, we will see the outbreak of the Onin War. Thank you for watching. And
again, we skipped the Onin War last time, so it's time to learn about it. Let's do it. Episode 2, the Onin War.
In the last video, we saw how the power and authority of the Ashikaga shogunate was falling to pieces, allowing many ambitious lords to begin viewing their positions as increasingly autonomous. Now we find ourselves once again at another boiling point in Japan's history.
I mean, I guess I could put them in Japanese then. For the GP viewers, auto-translate to Japanese. Why is Japanese?
As a series of unforeseen events would lead to the outbreak of the country at war.
Well, I guess we can pass the intro since we're gonna watch many videos in a row. It's a cool intro though. It's a very cool intro. The Onin War.
In the year 1464, the Ashikaga shogunate, which ruled from Kyoto, was under the control of Shogun Ashikaga Yoshimasa, who in actuality cared very little for the matters of politics and the state, but rather preferred to spend time appreciating the arts, which as we remember were flourishing throughout this period. It can be seen that Yoshimasa dedicated much of his time to the reading and writing of poetry and garden crafting, wishing to create a luxurious retirement villa for himself, to lock his mind away from the troubles of the outside world. Although, in his haste to...
Not the greatest mindset for the leader, you know? Like, the guy's already thinking of retiring rather than running the country. It starts in the Onin War, while others say it started after it. Interesting.
To abdicate the position of shogun, the problem arose that he had no true son to take up the position after him. To fix this issue, he reached out to his brother, Ashikaga Yoshimi, who had been living the life of a monk at a Buddhist monastery. Originally, Yoshimi had no interest in becoming shogun. However, he would eventually be convinced to leave his religious life and return to the capital to take the position from his brother.
But then
the transition of the title all seemed to be going smoothly, without trouble, until the previously unforeseen occurred. Yoshimi's wife, Tomiko, gave birth to a baby boy.
It happens all the time in history. I feel like I've seen that in so many videos on the history of different countries. In Europe, quite a bit as well. Like, you know, okay, I've got no son, so okay, maybe my brother can be the next king or ruler, whatever. But then actually, I just end up having a son. It happens so many times, and then it leads to war and chaos and all that. I guess it's still not as bad as having multiple sons who fight each other.
This child's name would be Ashikaga Yoshihisa. Tomiko immediately displayed her desire to have her son Yoshihisa be named the true heir and not Yoshimi. However, her words would fall deaf on the ears of the shogun, as Yoshimasa retreated away from the world, simply allowing the conflict to play out on its own. Although Tomiko was not able to secure legitimacy from Yoshimasa, she would soon be approached by the leader of the Yamana clan, Yamana Sozen. The Yamana clan, for some time now, had been rivals with the Hosokawa clan, led by Hosokawa Katsumoto, who
He looks like Kao.
actually Yamana Sozen's son-in-law. Years earlier, Katsumoto had been granted the position of Kanrei, which meant Shogun's deputy. This gave him and the Hosokawa clan much power and sway in the capital.
They still exist? I did not know that. Have they managed to, become diverse again and less inbred? Some of the clans surviving nice and special. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by that. Yeah.
It was this power that Yamana Sozen coveted and wished to challenge. As Katsumoto moved to support Yoshimi's claim to the position of shogun, Sozen now finally saw the opportunity he needed to make war against the Hosokawa by supporting Yoshihisa's claim. Now that open war loomed on the horizon, the Hosokawa and Yamana clans began calling in aid from other allied clans. Most notably, the Ouchi clan would throw their support behind the Yamana, while opposing branches of the Hatakeyama clan took sides with both the Hosokawa and Yamana, as separate branches of the Hatakeyama clan feuded over who should be appointed the next shogunal Kanrei. By 1467, it was estimated that both sides were roughly 80,000 men strong, causing the province in which Kyoto sat, Yamashiro, to be full of armies ready for battle.
I was watching stuff like this in so many story videos, they kind of don't even mention the population of the country at the time, 2 armies of 80,000, but how many people was there in the country at the time, you know? I just like to know this kind of numbers because it gives you a better sense of scale of how big it is or not, you know, because depending on what time of history, 20,000 men is a lot, and some of the time history it's 500,000 men isn't actually enough to do much. It's kind of random.
However, for a time, neither side made a move against the other, in fear that the first side to act would be likely labeled the rebel faction. This state of turmoil would finally erupt in February of 1467 when members of the Yamana clan set fire to the Hosokawa mansion in Kyoto. In retaliation, the Hosokawa clan attacked an important Yamana storehouse, which of course only escalated the situation. Within a short amount of time, both sides began attacking each other's properties all across the capital, until finally, all-out fighting began between both factions. As thousands of samurai and ashigaru clashed throughout the streets, Kyoto burned to ash. The Onin War had begun. Eventually,
kind of crazy that they just fought in the capital like this.
The capital itself would be transformed into a battlefield of blackened rubble and charred out buildings, each side claiming various portions of the city and fighting over different sectors of control. To hold the line, soldiers dug trenches into the streets and erected barricades along with other types of defenses. This was all occurring while Shogun Ashikaga Yoshimasa secluded himself within his poetry and the planning of his retirement villa. Although
I understand that again, he didn't have a choice, he's noble family, so they put him on the throne, but if you don't want to do it, just give the throne to someone else. Emperors retired all the time, so just do like the emperors and do your shogun and retire and give it to someone else that actually wants to take care of things.
The epicenter of the conflict was in Yamashiro, fighting broke out all across the country, with clans either throwing their support behind their chosen faction or using the chaos of the war to further their own territorial holdings. In time, Hosokawa forces would end up being pushed back to the northeast reaches of the city, near their mansion. In aims to hold off new waves of incoming Yamana troops, Katsumoto ordered what soldiers he had outside of the city to march into the Yamana clan's home province of Inaba. This would work to halt the flow of incoming Yamana reinforcements. However, more troops from the Aochi were soon to arrive to the front, bolstering the Yamana forces within the capital. Yamana Sozen used his replenished army to launch an attack on the imperial palace in attempts to capture the imperial family. Unfortunately for him, Hosokawa Katsumoto was able to quickly get the imperial family out of the palace and
this guy looks way too cool.
into the headquarters of the Bakufu before the palace would be seized by the Yamana. The final major engagement of 1467 was fought in October at the Battle of Shokukuji, in which Yamana Sozen personally led an attack against Hosokawa clan forces who were held up inside of a heavily fortified Buddhist monastery. The clash proved to be one of the bloodiest of the war, as in the end it is said that 8 carts full of the severed heads of Hosokawa soldiers were taken by the Yamana clan. However, even with their victory at Shokukuji, the Yamana clan was still not able to completely defeat the Hosokawa, as fresh reinforcements from allied clans continued to pour in, allowing them to hold their entrenched positions. As the war entered its second year, a period of peace would now settle in over the city, as both sides sat in their heavily defended fortifications. Small engagements would still occasionally break out, most notably when the Hosokawa clan brought in trebuchets to fling explosives into Yamana territory.
Man, okay. They're really not cheating, huh?
Yet for the most part, the lines were drawn and there would be no more movement.
This actually all sounds pretty interesting, that most of the war so far was confined to just the city, to Kyoto. I wonder if there's any games, movie, or manga about this part of things, because yeah, like just this urban warfare in the city with samurai sounds pretty damn interesting.
However, out in the countryside of Yamashiro province, the two feuding branches of the Hatakeyama clan still continued to fight until they could fight no longer. In the period of standstill, Katsumoto would fall back onto politics, managing to persuade Shogun Yoshimasa and Emperor Gotsuchi Mikado to brand the Yamana as the rebel faction, and name him as the general of the official shogunal attacks on the Yamana clan. Yet, even these new official decrees by the shogun and the emperor would have little overall effect on the war. What did, however...
I mean, the emperor has lost power for like quite a bit by now, and the shogun is, like the current shogun doesn't care about anything, so I guess their word don't mean much to most of the clans.
However, managed to change the course of the war was in 1469, when the unthinkable occurred. The shogun's brother and official heir to the shogunate, Yoshimi, decided to switch sides from the Hosokawa clan to the Yamana clan, possibly due to him having more respect for Yamana Sozen than Hosokawa Katsumoto. This would doom the Yamana faction. The shogun would quickly declare Yoshimi a rebel and have him stripped of all titles and positions. This further legitimized the Hosokawa clan's side of the conflict, causing many allies of the Yamana to switch sides to join the Hosokawa. This of course led to an odd turn of events, in which the shogun's son Yoshihisa would be named the new heir, even with the support of the now rebel Yamana clan. Seeing the conflict come to its strange end, Hosokawa Katsumoto and Yamana Sozen both backed away from the war, which they were both very tired of fighting. Each of them dying from natural causes years later in 1473. Unfortunately, even though the two main instigators of the Onin War were...
And look at this piece of art. can you even imagine? I was talking about like I played a mod called Soku, like a Sengoku Jidai mod for Mountain Blade Bannerlord 2, and they kind of recreated the siege of around that time. And in that game, you literally, like, in first person, can assault a castle where you have to climb the ladder as you have guys, you know, shooting with muskets or arrows at you, throwing rocks, and trying to push the ladder. It's kind of like, you know, I can't actually imagine being the soldier that has to climb this. Obviously, in most siege, the defender eventually gets overwhelmed, but I just don't want to be the guy that has to climb the ladder. That's what I'm saying.
Now out of the conflict, the war still continued across the country, as many daimyo still stubbornly refused to cease waging war. So, what can we learn from all this? The cause of the Onin War can be attributed to several factors, first of which being the weak and inefficient Ashikaga shogunate, which led to the ambitious and power-hungry lords wishing to assert their dominance.
I mean, we really saw that, yeah. I'm surprised that the Onin War raged for like 2 years in the capital. And, you know, the shogun was doing nothing about it. I understand that, you know, he clearly didn't care, right? He was a shogun that didn't care, right? But that, you know, no one else in the upper rank of the government was like, we need a shogun that cares and that can solve this. This is insane that we're letting the samurai clan fight in the middle of the capital. I mean, it's really like the biggest show of, you know, like, we have no power and you can do what you want and we can't do much about it.
The second being the succession dispute itself. Even though the war may have started under the label of a succession dispute, the real cause can be more appropriately given to the rivalry between the Yamana and Hosokawa clans, rendering their dispute little more than a legitimate reason to go to war. The war itself was devastated and in utter ruin. Yet conflict would also spread to the provinces, where the clans joined in the fight, either for loyalty's sake or to further their own aims. In the next video, we will see the Onin War come to its bitter end.
Sometimes, you know, for the most part, I mean, it doesn't usually stop the next ruler trying to get even more power control, to know that the last ruler was killed for trying to have too much power control. Like, rulers always try too hard anyway. Okay. Well, that was interesting. I definitely feel like that was actually more of a recap than I expected. There might be like more of the individual battle stuff to learn about for the Onin War, so I will write it down and, well, I'll just open a tab. And it might be something that we go back to eventually, once we finish the chronological order. I wonder if there's a lot more to know about the Onin War. But yeah, that was interesting. Okay, so episode 3.
In the last video,
I guess we can pass the intro. The Sengoku Jidai. The birth of the Ikon Iki.
By the year 1475, the map of Japan was changing as clans rose up to join in the fighting.
This is Total War, right? Is there any context? Music, artwork? Doesn't say it, but I think so.
However, the most unfortunate victims of this bloody conflict were simple civilians. Farmers whose fields were pillaged and burned, and merchants whose inventory and trade were raided.
It is Total War.
Into hard times of despair. Most prominently, those who lived in central Honshu, where the fighting was at its thickest.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Dark days that people would turn to religion in hopes of salvation, making it the perfect time for one such monk to spread his teachings. His name was Renyo. Now, religion in Japan is an entire video all on its own.
Thankfully, in the last stream, the Byoden video covered that a lot, the religion at that time and all of the new sects that were popping up, and the evolution of Zen Buddhism, and then the evolution of, like, you know, it started from like people, I guess, being told that, if you're just a peasant or like a lower person, you're probably like not reaching heaven basically. But eventually, there was some new sect that were like, all you need to do is say a mantra, and that's enough to guarantee your place. And there was a lot of evolution like that to make it more accessible to everybody basically. Yeah.
So I'll keep things simple here. In the days of old, Japan was a melting pot of various Asian faiths. One such sect of faith being Pure Land Buddhism. Pure Land Buddhism is akin to Mahayana Buddhism, a more spiritual form of Buddhism, whose practitioners view Buddha as more godly than other sects, often calling him the Amida Buddha. Pure Land Buddhism believes that in order to truly find enlightenment, one must be reborn into an uncorrupted world, the Pure Land. In the 1200s, a monk named Shinran would reform a sect of Pure Land Buddhism known as Jodo Shinshu, focusing more greatly on the roots of Pure Land teachings and
Music is kind of loud. It's hard to tell what he's saying.
challenging the ways in which Buddhism had been practiced in Japan at that time. However, Jodo Shinshu would endure a hard existence, as his teachings were not widely known or accepted, and at times it would come into conflict with other various sects of Buddhism. This brings us to 1457, when Renyo became the head of the Jodo Shinshu Hongonji Temple in Kyoto. From here, he worked towards converting people to the Jodo Shinshu faith all across central Japan, and to the dismay of other Buddhist sects in the area, Renyo was successful. Eventually, monks from Mount Hiei would label Renyo's Jodo Shinshu teachings as heretical, prompting them to send warrior monks to attack Honganji in
Always the way on monk.
1465, leading to it being burnt to the ground, and forcing Renyo into hiding as he continued to be hunted down. 2 years later, in 1467, the Onin War began, throwing central Japan into chaos.
I mean, it must have been quite the omen if the monks are fighting, if the monks are merging each other. Yeah, it's probably not, promising much peace, for the rest of the country.
Renyo wished to re-establish Honganji Temple, far from Mount Hiei and far from the battles occurring across central Japan. This led him to believe the province of Echizen to be the best answer, as it seemed out of the reach of Mount Hiei and already contained other Jodo Shinshu.
It seems pretty close though.
Before establishing the new Honganji, Renyo went about visiting the other Jodo Shinshu temples throughout the province, eventually visiting congregations and sharing his thoughts, interpretations, and criticisms of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, returning to the root of Shinran's teachings. His words echoed throughout the province, attracting more and more to hear him speak. Soon, thousands of farmers, merchants, masterless samurai called ronin, and even lower-ranking samurai began to follow him. Eventually, in 1473, neighboring Kaga province would become embroiled in a civil war, leading to the followers of Renyo joining the fight, largely to expand their own influence. They now called themselves the Iko-Iki, the single-minded school. In time, Kaga province would fall fully under the control of the Iko-Iki, just as Echizen had. In 1475, during the waning years of the Onin War, having converted both Echizen and Kaga province, Renyo would see the need to make his way back towards Kyoto, in aims to aid the common people, who for years now had been suffering from the chaos of the war. He no longer worried about being
They look pretty chill about it. I mean, there's just like a ton of archers behind them, but they're like, whatever, we're just passing by.
Suffering from the chaos of the war. He no longer worried about being attacked by monks from Mount Hiei, as he now marched with a force much larger.
So that was the solution. Fight fire with fire. Like, they had stronger monk than me, so I made an army of monk to fight the other monk. Okay.
Than any threat Mount Hiei could muster up. As he traveled, his followers dispersed his writings to the common people, so that all could know his teachings. This led to many more falling under his influence. In 1477, the Onin War finally came to an end, as the last of the rebellious daimyo finally backed down, following Ashikaga Yoshihisa taking the position of shogun from his father.
Okay.
However, the damage of the Onin War had already been done, as it would leave an impact that would last for over 100 more years. The shogunate crippled, the emperor powerless, and Kyoto left in ruins.
And the monks marching to
To hordes of looters who moved in to ravage the desolate capital and countryside. Although one could still point to Kyoto and say that is where control exists, that was simply no longer the truth, rather a lie. The emperor, the shogun, and the imperial court were now little more than simple figureheads. True power now existed in the hands of daimyo across the country.
And since when, Daniel? Since Yoritomo, the first shogun, basically. I mean, like, I don't know if I would say it was the only good shogun. There was some after him that weren't too bad, but it was all kind of downhill up to now. You know, it was like him going up and then things going downhill. Maybe there was one that wasn't too bad, so it's like this, but then it's back downhill. Yeah, it's been kind of downhill for 200-300 years now, since you know, Yoritomo, yeah.
Who were now free to further their ambitions, attacking their enemies and growing their territorial holdings, becoming rich and mighty. The Sengoku Jidai, the age of the country at war, had begun.
And the
By
sick begins.
1496, Renyo retired from the world, moving out of Kyoto to live by himself in a small rural area.
I thought he meant he died. I thought retired from the world was a kind way to say he died. Okay.
To the southwest, known as Osaka. Here he would later die in 1499, but not before being found by his followers, who would build a temple where he lived. In time, this temple would grow in size and numbers, eventually coming to be known as Ishiyama Honganji, the most heavily fortified temple in all of Japan,
Okay.
and the headquarters of the Iko-Iki, militant monks and champions of the common people.
We move far away.
What can we learn from all this? The Onin War would ravage the lower classes of society, causing many to adhere to the teachings of Renyo, a Jodo Shinshu monk who would ignite the Iko-Iki movement, as the Iko-Iki would go on to impact Japan
It's no joke.
for the next
I'm
100
gonna get
years.
sieged then for 11 years.
As the war came to its end, in the ashes of the capital, authority could no longer be found. The many daimyo now essentially had the freedom to go about making their own wars, with no repercussions. Thus, even though the event known as the Onin War came to an end, many more countless wars were now to follow in its wake.
Yeah.
In the next video, we will look at the first
I guess we can pause here. Gun monks, yeah. That's right, guns are really becoming a thing around this time. Yeah, I mean, warrior monks are something. They're really something. I wonder in how many cultures it was common to have warrior priest or monk. Yeah. It just seems so against, you know, what you expect of like a religious person, right? Well, not a normal religious person, because we see, you know, you could say that like in the crusade all the soldiers were like religious, you know, so that doesn't count. So, like a religious figure kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess now I think about it, wasn't there like some warrior pope back in the Renaissance or whatever, or medieval time, around the time of the shit, what am I thinking of the Martin Luther King, yeah, around whatever time that was. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Okay, episode 4, restoration of the Ojo. The Ojo are gonna be back. Interesting. Sengoku Jidai. Selection of the Ojo.
After the end of the Onin War, many clans across the country were coming out as major regional powers. These of course being the Uesugi, the Takeda, the Imagawa.
As always, I only like the Uesugi because of Uesugi Kenshin from Sengoku Dance. Fight me.
The Hatakeyama, the Ochi, the Otomo, the Shimazu, and of course, the two main instigators of the Onin War, the Hosokawa and Yamana.
The only name I really know as like powerful is Uesugi and Takeda with a Shingen. The others, not as familiar.
Although, their power would soon enter into a rapid decline, following the deaths of Hosokawa Katsumoto and Yamana Sozin. Other famous clans of the Sengoku Jidai were yet to rise to prominence, most notably in the north, in the west, and in the south. However, soon enough, the map of Japan would frantically begin to change as clans across the country would rise and fall. Some allied one day, enemies the next, and then allied soon again. Factions turning like the flip of a coin. It would be this chaotic period that would allow someone of very humble or insignificant origins to ascend to greatness in what would be known as Gekko Kujo, which means the lower topple the higher. These
which was actually the name. I was thinking about Sokuo, which is the more modern mod for Mountain Blade Bannerlord, the new game. But in the game from 20 years ago, Mountain Blade, there was a mod called Gekko. What was the word? Gekko Kujo. Which I used to play like 10, 12 years ago maybe. I recommend it. I mean, it's kind of dated by now. So like you can either play this one or you can play, again, Bannerlord's Sokuo. But when I was young I played this and it was a lot of fun, yeah. Back then. It was a lot of fun. Not a bad mod to play. Though recently I played Sokuo and obviously, you know, it's on a more modern engine and it looks a lot better. Though it's not finished yet. Well, it's already pretty advanced, but it's not fully finished. Like this is, you know, the Gekko Kujo from 2014, and then Sokuo just came out last year for the second game, Bannerlord. Watching these videos is gonna make me want to play it again. It's a really fun mod, I really recommend it. Yeah, very quality. Very, very quality. Yeah, and this is the map of Japan that they have, with many other clans. Actually, probably a lot more of the clans that I even know. There's gun in it as well. Guns are kind of fun to use. Anyway, just recommendation. I'm actually waiting for an update since I already played it like recently, and they hadn't made the map of Hokkaido yet, and there was still like a bunch of stuff that they wanted to do because naval battles are not really like too well done yet, so I'm waiting for that. Oh yeah, it takes place in 1568, so it's farther away than what we're learning right now, so yeah. Anyway, I think I'll replay it once I've finished this series of video and I know the full story. Yeah.
Of Gekko Kujo would bring forth the concept of the Sengoku Daimyo as someone who took power from another who previously had power. This is in contrast to the Shugo Daimyo, who, as I have stated before, were feudal clan lords who emerged as ambitious rulers because of the weak state of the Ashikaga shogunate. Scholars often point to the first example of a Sengoku Daimyo being Asakura Toshikage, who was a lower-ranking retainer of the Shiba clan, who had been allied to the Yamana during the Onin War. In 1471, Toshikage would break away from the Shiba clan and declare his support for the Hosokawa clan, kickstarting the Asakura clan and eventually defeating the Shiba clan, taking full control of Ichizen, which, if we remember from the last video, was also at this time now fully under the religious sway of the Iko Iki. However, The more famous and influential example of an early Sengoku daimyo would be a samurai named Ise Shinkuro, later to be known as Hojo Soun. Shinkuro's origins are
Definitely no Hojo, yeah.
somewhat of a mystery, with it being said that he studied under monks at Daitokuji Temple in Kyoto, and later becoming a ronin with 6 followers. We can finally see that by 1468 he would be employed as a low-ranking retainer of the Imagawa clan, possibly due to the fact that his sister had been married into the Imagawa family. The Imagawa had been previously in
It is all no. We are, I think, 100 years before Nobunaga. He's not there yet.
service of the Kamakura shogunate, and now the Ashikaga shogunate. Having enjoyed a prosperous rule, reigning over 3 provinces in south-central Honshu, Mikawa, Totomi, and Sugura. Unfortunately, by 1480, the Imagawa clan was soon to fall into its own succession dispute, as samurai began taking sides behind Imagawa Ujichika, the rightful heir to the clan, and his ambitious cousin, Oshika Norimitsu. Shinkuro would take sides with Ujichika and personally see to the defeat of the upstart Norimitsu. In reward for his great service to the Imagawa clan, Shinkuro would be given control of Kokukuji Castle in Sugura province, with which he could guard the Imagawa clan's eastern borders.
Okay.
Roughly a decade later, in 1491, neighboring Izu province would also face a succession crisis, in which Shinkuro would decide to intervene, invading Izu and claiming it for himself. Soon Shinkuro would use his control of Izu and Sugura to establish his independence as a feudal daimyo. This would lead him on his own path of expansion. In 1495, he marched his army into the Uesugi-controlled Sagami province, laying siege to Odawara Castle. He would arrange for the commander of Odawara to be killed while he was out hunting. This would allow for the defense of the fortress to fall rather quickly. The capture of Odawara would mean greater ability to further attack into Sagami, eventually obtaining full control of the province by 1516. Also taking the city of Kamakura, which had been the headquarters of the previous shogunate over 100 years earlier.
Yeah, it's very
Shinkuro would die in 1519, having established a powerful...
I mean, not bad. He conquered like 4 regions, starting as like a very low rank monk, then having only 6 followers to conquering like 4 regions. I would say not bad. Not bad. He was pretty good.
Full legacy as a brilliant commander. Once a Ronin, he would die the head of his own mighty clan, a clan which would continue its conquests and expansion following his death. His son, Ujitsuna, would eventually seek to give the clan a formidable name, a name that many had previously respected and admired, now controlling their previous home province.
So they're not actually Hojo, they just take the name Hojo because it's legendary in history, okay.
Ujitsuna would resurrect the name Hojo, giving birth to the new Hojo clan, which would come to dominate the Kanto region.
So it's really not that there was any kind of blood connection anymore. It's just, you know, take the name of legendary family. Okay. Okay.
This would leave Ise Shinkuro to be forever remembered posthumously as Hojo Soun. So, what can we learn from this? The Onin War would indirectly give rise to the concept of Geikukujo, which means the lower toppling the higher. This can be seen first by Asakura Toshikage, and more famously by Hojo Soun.
We should do Geikukujo today. There's a lot of country that needs a bit of Geikukujo spirit. I'm just saying, you know. I think we need to Geikukujo a lot of countries.
Soun, of course, going on to establish a mighty clan, which would come to be the great regional power of Kanto. In the next video, we will continue looking...
Okay, well, very interesting. I mean, this is obviously the start of what will be replicated so many times, right? Like small clan just trying to gain a lot of power, a lot more land, and all that. And for the first one to do it, yeah, they were pretty successful. I mean, it's a good start. It's a good start. Okay, very interesting. Episode 5. Fire in the West.
Video, we saw the
Sengoku Jidai, Fires in the West. 1500.
By the turn of the century, in 1500, Western Japan was ablaze in rivalries between clans, the two main powers in the West being the Aochi and the Otomo, having frequently come into conflict with one another following the end of the Onin War. Other key players in the region were the Shoni and the Yamago clan.
Okay.
The Aochi had gained their prominence from accumulating great wealth through their trade with Korea and China, which all funneled through the important Ochi trade port of Yamaguchi, often referred to as the Kyoto of the West. The Otomo, on the other hand, had amassed their power over hundreds of years, being the clan that primarily defended Kyushu from the Mongol invasions of the late 1200s, and had become a major supporter of the Ashikaga shogunate following the overthrow of the Kamakura shogunate. Things would begin to further escalate 1 year later in 1501. Ashikaga Yoshitane, a previous shogun who had been deposed in 1493, had sought protection by the Ochi clan head, Ochi Yoshioki, who allowed Yoshitane to establish his new power base in Yamaguchi, insisting that he was still the legitimate shogun, aiming to one day march back and retake Kyoto. Ochi Yoshioki supported Yoshitane, mostly due to his aggression towards the Hosokawa clan, who still held sway over Kyoto and were in support of the new shogun, Ashikaga Yoshizumi. Shogun Ashikaga Yoshizumi would in time declare Yoshitane and Yoshioki enemies of the state, ordering surrounding clans to march on the Ochi. The already hostile Otomo clan would answer the call, along with the Shoni, who would set out to destroy the Ochi, laying siege to the Ochi-controlled Umagatake castle, resulting in the largest battle of the conflict. The Otomo would be successful in taking the castle, but would ultimately be unable to hold it, as it would be taken back by Ochi forces soon after. Throughout the following years, minor engagements would be fought between the two factions with no real exchange of territory. This would eventually cause the two sides to sue for peace in their stalemate, allowing Yoshitane and Yoshioki to turn their attention back on Kyoto.
So it's really like, yeah, we really reach a point where now, you know, there's so little power in the government itself that the clans fight each other and then they make peace with each other as totally individual states, basically, with no involvement by the main government. It's kind of crazy how fast that happened. I mean, the descent into no power from Kyoto anymore.
Kyoto. The Ochi would begin a period of consolidation as they built up their supplies for their march on the capital, also being joined by the western branch of the Takeda clan. Finally, in 1508, the conditions would seem right to invade, as an opportunity presented itself due to the constant infighting within the Hosokawa clan, who began appearing increasingly weak. This would cause several separate branches of the Hosokawa clan to break off and switch sides to the Ochi, as Yoshioki's forces neared the capital, making it so that by the time the Ochi clan actually reached the capital, there was no other choice than for Shogun Ashikaga Yoshizumi and his remaining Hosokawa allies to flee. Ashikaga Yoshitane would be restored as shogun, giving Yoshioki the position of Kanrei, the shogunal deputy. The Hosokawa clan would continue their fight against the Ochi for the next few years, forcing Yoshioki to remain in the capital instead of returning home. Over the course of the war, the Hosokawa would actually end up retaking Kyoto from the Ochi for a brief period of time, until Yoshioki would lay claim to it once again after his victory over the Hosokawa at the Battle of Funa-Okayama. The conflict would eventually come to an end in 1512, when Ashikaga Yoshizumi suddenly died, breaking the Hosokawa will to fight. Yoshioki would continue to remain in the capital until 1518. In the years after the end of the fighting with the Hosokawa, there would be some resemblance of peace and stability in central Japan. However, in his absence, a new unchecked threat would begin to rise in the
Of
west.
course.
The Amago clan,
Amago.
led by Amago Tsunehisa, had over time become mighty and ambitious. Their presence was increasingly seen as a threat when the western branch of the Takeda clan broke away from the grips of the Ochi and pledged their allegiance to the Yamago. In 1517, the western Takeda would turn on the last Ochi ally in Aki province, the young Komatsumaru, head of the small and seemingly insignificant Mori clan that held
Mori.
control of Yoshida Koriyama Castle. The western Takeda would begin launching raids against the Mori clan, eventually causing Komatsumaru's relative, Mori Motonari, to set out and meet their Takeda enemies at the Battle of Arita Nakaide, being outnumbered nearly 5-1.
That seems like a terrible idea. 5-1. That's insane.
Yet Motonari would still hold strong in the face of overwhelming foes. Initially, Mori forces would engage the Takeda vanguard until the main bulk of the Takeda forces would eventually arrive, being led by the western Takeda daimyo, Takeda Motoshige. They would meet on opposite banks.
I've seen this many times.
Takeda Moto.
The big like stuff there on their back. Seems like this is in Total War, and it was also like in the Shokuo mod I played. So I'm guessing it's a real historical thing, but I don't really get what it's about. It's like a big balloon on the back, which just makes you look like a big target. I don't really get it. What is it supposed to be?
Motoshige. They would meet on opposite banks of the Matauchi River, with the Takeda pressing the attacks against the much smaller Mori army, trudging into the water.
But in the water they get picked off by the archers.
Motonari and his men would be continually pushed back, as Motonari constantly tried to rally his men to stand their ground against the non-stop incoming waves of Takeda troops, until finally, a miracle would happen. The daimyo of the western Takeda, Takeda Motoshige, would advance across the river and aim to join the fray, only to be struck and killed by a Mori arrow. This would cause the Takeda army to break and rout, resulting in a Mori victory.
Really? Just like that? 5-1 and you run because your leader is dead? Okay, damn. Like, if I was a soldier in a battle, I wouldn't even notice my leader is dead. I'd just be like, you know, too busy fighting and not dying, you know? Yeah. Okay.
Shige's death would lead to the decline and eventual destruction of the western Takeda clan. The surprising defeat of the Takeda impressed Amago Tsunehisa enough to the point that he would offer Motonari one of his daughters in marriage. Motonari would agree, thus abandoning his former Ochi masters and forming an alliance between the Mori and Amago clans. Years later, in 1522, Tsunehisa would launch a new campaign against the Ochi, calling on Motonari to lay siege to Kagamiyama Castle, while he advanced on Kanayama Castle. Motonari would succeed in taking Kagamiyama Castle, but unfortunately, Tsunehisa would be repelled and forced to retreat from Kanayama, ending the brief conflict. However, Motonari's success would only serve to further the power and rise of the budding Mori clan. Further propelled 1 year later, when in 1523, the head of the Mori clan,
when does Mori Kogoro appears?
Kanatsumaru, would die unexpectedly, allowing Motonari to finally take control of the Mori clan for himself. So, what can we learn from this? The Ochi clan would initially be the great power of the West, but when Ochi Yoshioki decided to march on Kyoto to reinstall the deposed...
I think I'll pass the recap part. I mean, it's just a recap of what we would just watch, so I don't think I really need it. I think it's fine to skip. Yeah. I think we can go to the next one. Okay, well, Interesting. I mean, it's still like small scale compared to the amount of clans that will pop up and fight, ally, betray each other, right? But it's already, quite a mess. I mean, the amount of clan politics that must be happening. Yeah, it must really be something. I wonder how they avoid to beat their team's member in battle. I think they probably had colors on their armor and stuff like that to say like which side you're on. Like even a low soldier, or maybe they have like a colored armband or something. I assume there was a way, yeah. Yeah, I assume so. I mean, yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I mean, in a lot of war, there was friendly fire, like in the Napoleonic Wars, for example, they had a lot of like single color shit, and friendly fire wasn't unusual because white, for example, like I don't know, like some of your allies are in white, but the enemy is in white too, and so sometimes by mistake you shoot your ally. It's something that happens. I mean, I guess it's a problem throughout the story, like how to tell who the enemy is. Yeah, they look at the flags. Yeah, but not every soldier is holding a flag, right? Episode 6. The Thunderings.
In the last video, since the 10th century, the Shimazu clan had ruled over the southern tip of Kyushu, over time steadily growing their influence, controlling not only their own home province of Satsuma, but eventually coming to dominate the provinces of Osumi and Hyuga.
Which would later be the end of the samurai, right? Like the Satsuma Rebellion.
However, not expanding their territory into Higo.
Also, Hyuga, we learned it's Miyazaki, right? Later on.
Which was home to several minor clans who tended to throw their support behind larger allies. If their stability could have remained intact, it can be assumed that the Shimazu clan could have eventually taken over full control of Kyushu in the early years of the Sengoku Jidai, holding 3 provinces and appearing as the true might of the island. Yet tragedy for the Shimazu would unfortunately strike after the death of the clan head Shimazu Tatsuhisa in 1474, causing tension between rival branches of the clan as they attempted to assert their authority, while Shimazu Taramasa assumed the position of the new clan head. After 10 years of turmoil, open war would finally begin within the clan in 1484, spreading across all of the Shimazu-controlled territories in southern Kyushu, with the fighting growing worse as minor families began to enter the conflict, taking advantage of the disarray in the Shimazu clan, even causing Shimazu clan retainers to begin entering into rebellion. The situation would come to a head in 1506. After years of fighting, the Shimazu clan would lose their control over Osumi and Hyuga as rival clans stepped in to assume new rule, with the Kimotsuki clan taking over Osumi and the Ito clan taking Hyuga. As the Shimazu clan fell apart, Taramasa, feeling the weight of his failure to stop the collapse, decided to commit seppuku in disgrace.
Well,
the Shimazu were now only left with Satsuma. However, in light of recent events, it appears the rupture of the Shimazu was somewhat of a wake-up call for the remaining members of the clan, when Taramasa's sons managed to temporarily stabilize the clan, ensuring its survival. However, they would need to work hard in order to retake the lands that were lost during their own infighting, in order to re-establish the might they once had and the respect they once commanded. Another clan that was now also beginning to fall apart was the once powerful Hosokawa. Beginning with the new infighting that broke out within the Hosokawa clan in 1508, prompting the invasion of the Ochi, the Hosokawa began to lose their grip over various provinces. In particular, the first to drift out of Hosokawa authority was Tosa on the island of Shikoku, which until recently they had been the main force dominating the island, only sharing it with the Kono clan, who ruled over Iyo province. Eventually, the once minor but growing Ichijo clan would manage to push all Hosokawa influence out of Tosa, being backed by several lesser clans in the region.
Slim River.
The
He sounds
Chosoho
weak.
and the Motoyama,
Oof.
who were in fact also rivals, frequently coming into conflict with.
Like, so many of those names I've definitely seen before, but, you know, outside of the name, I can't really tell you anything about the clan. Chosokabe, Motoyama, Ichijo, yeah, I mean, I know I've seen the name. Even some of the logo for them look familiar, but I really, like, don't know anything that they done, you know? It's kind of crazy. I guess I really don't know much about, like, I think I only know about Nobunaga, you know, the Nobunaga clan. Otherwise, like, even the Takeda or the Uesugi, like, I don't actually know what they did. I just know that they were strong, but I don't know what they did. I have no idea what they did, yeah. Motoyama is original mountain. Yama is mountain, yeah. I recognize some clans, though. Totawa.
Who were in fact also rivals,
Strong
frequently
archer.
coming into conflict with one another. This first loss of territory would only be followed by more insurrection, as the Hosokawa clan would continue to crumble over time. The final clan that overwent serious infighting and disaster during the early years of the Sengoku Jidai was the Uesugi clan.
Oh.
The Uesugi were known to be one of the strongest allies of the Ashikaga shogunate, not only in their actual support, but also in their size. At the
Against
beginning
all
of the
these Christian
Sengoku
clan.
Jidai, ruling over Echigo, Kotsuke, Musashi, and Sagami. However, their size did not correlate with their actual military might, as countless branches of different families made up the bulk of Uesugi power.
Where's
This
Kenshin?
dysfunction was made first apparent in 1494 when Ise Shinkuro, soon to be known as Hojo Soun, invaded Sagami, eventually taking most of the province by 1516, and
Before he
finally
dies, yeah.
securing it by 1518 after the siege of Arai, causing the odd story of the Lord of Arai, Miura Yoshimoto, who is said to have decapitated himself as the Hojo forces stormed his castle. The weakness of the Uesugi clan
How do you decapitate yourself? Did he build a guillotine? Zelda logo.
was now on full display for all, causing infighting to erupt as many retainers and branches of the Uesugi family attempted to assert their own dominance. This would in time lead to the shattering of the clan. Yet, the Uesugi would not completely fade away, as three separate yet allied Uesugi clans would rise up in place of the old unified clan. These being the Echigo Uesugi of Echigo province, the Yamanouchi Uesugi of Kotsuke province, and the Ogigiyatsu Uesugi of Musashi province. However,
Okay.
another large family, who were former retainers of the Uesugi, would also break away. The Nagao clan, led by Nagao Tamekage, who would establish
Cool
their
guy.
power base in western Echigo, where they would soon come into direct conflict with
Where is he getting this out? I mean, it looks all out of some Ikemen game, Otome game.
Iko-Iki influence spreading out of Kaga province and through the Jinbo clan-controlled Eichu province. So, what can...
Okay, that's a lot. Man, I can tell that while this is probably like the most in-depth version of the history of this on YouTube, we're still like skipping a lot, right? I guess you could really go so in-depth on like all of this like smaller clan, the sub-clan, the important people in the clan, and the rise to power, right? I guess this is such a dense period of history with probably so many like smaller stories that could be interesting to learn about. Yeah, eventually I'd love to go back to like more individual stories of people. But man, things are really just ramping up with so many clans, sub-clan, everybody fighting. I mean, like, the clan themselves can't even not fight with each other. Well, within itself, I guess. Yeah. They're going to be more focused when Nobunaga comes. Kenshin and Shingen. Okay. It's a mess. This is crazy. At least so far, like, the only place that's kind of chill is Northern Honshu and Hokkaido, but Hokkaido is not really in Japan yet. But yeah, Northern Honshu, you know, they are just relaxing for now. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. Alright. Next episode. The burning of Kamakura.
The actual video, I just wanted to mention that I have been linking the channel's social media in the description book of the page.
That was the intro. The burning of Kamakura.
By 1520, Issei Shinkuro, now known as Hojo Son, had
Northern Honshu will have another legend, Date Masamune, about the name.
Died, leaving his son, Hojo Ujetsuna, in charge of what had become the new Hojo clan. In time, he would move the Hojo capital to Odawara Castle, where he would build up its fortifications, eventually
And it looks pretty nice, look at that. Like the water and then like a very, very tall stone wall. That looks like a really bad site to attack. I love the look.
becoming one of the greatest strongholds in all of Japan. Of course, he would continue to follow in his father's great footsteps. Ujetsuna would continue to expand into the Kanto region, first pushing his way into Musashi province. As we covered in the previous video, the shortcomings of the Uesugi had led to the Uesugi clan collapsing into 3 minor Uesugi families, with Musashi province now under the control of the Ogigeyatsu branch of the Uesugi family. In 1524, Ujetsuna marched on the city of Edo, a city which, as you may know, would become extremely important in the future. However, at this point, it was
I actually conquered, like in my recent playthrough of the Sokuo mod, well, at first I was kind of like a random mercenary. Eventually I joined as a vassal of the Uesugi, and eventually I conquered Edo. That was one of the cities I got, even though it wasn't my main city or anything.
little more than a footstep in Ujetsuna's invasion of the province, as Edo lay in the middle of an important rice-growing center on the Kanto plain. The Lord of Edo Castle, Uesugi Tomooki, decided the best defense would be a stronger offense. Thus, he set out to meet the Hojo army in the field. In particular, Tomooki planned to fight the Hojo army while they attempted to cross
Always
the
a river.
Kanawa River. Unfortunately for Tomooki, Ujetsuna was well aware of Tomooki's plans, and instead simply circled around the Uesugi force.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, it's one of the most basic things in warfare, yeah, like having the high ground or being on the other side of the river while the enemy has to cross it. It's so basic, yeah.
Attacking it in the rear.
Well,
Tomooki was completely caught off guard and tried to make a full retreat. Yet when he arrived back at Edo, he found that treacherous forces in the castle had already turned coat to join the Hojo.
well,
Instead, Tomooki would be forced to fall back to Uesugi territory in northern Musashi. The seizure of Edo by the Hojo would lead to decades of tension and rivalry between the Uesugi and Hojo clans. It also began to cause other clans in the region to view the Hojo as a greater threat. This would eventually lead to new hostilities. Around that time, an ally of the Uesugi, the Satomi clan, who ruled over Awa province, started to plot against
Shiba
the
Prefecture.
Hojo. Their plan was to deal a great blow to the Hojo clan's morale by sacking the city of Kamakura. Thus, in 1526, forces under the command of Satomi Sanetaka landed in Sagami province and marched on the old capital of the shogunate. They succeeded in surprising the Hojo, capturing
Does Kamakura even matter? I mean, it doesn't really matter in 100 to 200 years at this point.
Kamakura and burning much of the town, including the great Tsurugaoka Hachiman Shrine, which was completely destroyed.
Okay, that's
The
bad.
last time the city had fallen was in 1333, when the Kamakura shogunate had been defeated, leading to the destruction of the old Hojo clan.
200 years before.
After their victory, Satomi forces would fall back and retreat home to Awa province. However, though they had dealt a devastating and symbolic blow to the Hojo clan, Ujetsuna would remain unfazed, keeping the clan steadfast
unfazed.
and continuing his invasion of the Kanto region. Another conflict that arose in 1526 was back in Kyushu. The Shimazu clan were once again facing yet another leadership dispute. In the previous video, we had seen how the Shimazu clan had suffered infighting throughout the early years of the Sengoku Jidai, reducing their land holdings by 2 provinces. Yet they were able to cease their infighting for some time, allowing stability to return. It seems, however, that this stability was not meant to last when, in 1526, the Shimazu daimyo, Shimazu Katsuhisa, who had no sons, would face a challenge from a relative of another branch of the Shimazu clan, Shimazu Sanehisa, who had grown discontent with Katsuhisa's leadership and was planning to break away and establish himself as an independent daimyo. Such an action would have surely crippled the Shimazu even further, taking them truly out of the Warring States period for good. Yet, the Shimazu clan was not meant to fall here. It was in 1526 that Sanehisa was able to gather an army to march against Katsuhisa, forcing him to flee and take refuge in Bungo province, which was under the control of the Otomo clan. Facing defeat and disgrace, Katsuhisa would consult on how they should proceed with Shimazu Tadayoshi, a relative from the same branch of the Shimazu family. They decided that Tadayoshi's young son, Shimazu Takahisa, would be adopted by Katsuhisa, which would in turn allow for Katsuhisa to step down as daimyo in favor of his newly adopted son. Soon Katsuhisa would sue for peace with Sanehisa, offering this shift in power as a solution to the troubles plaguing the clan. Sanehisa would agree to the change in command.
What kind of solution is that though? Okay.
Allowing the young Takahisa to take leadership for himself. It seemed to finally be what solved the problem of the Shimazu clan, as Takahisa would finally be able to restore order to the Shimazu clan.
I don't know about that.
Would one day set out to reclaim the lands that had been lost during their prior infighting. So, what can we learn from it?
Okay. Man. Just looking at the map, it's already like such chaos, right? And then again, it doesn't stop us just fighting between clans of different regions. Even within like the clan themselves, ton of people are fighting. And to an extent it makes sense, right? Because, you know, if leadership is bad, this is like right now, this is really like a survival kind of thing, right? I mean, if your leader is bad, your clan is going to get swallowed up and entirely destroyed by another one. So, you know, it's kind of hard to let go that the leadership is bad. It's you know, it's easier to like not care that much and let it go when it's, you know, the more peaceful time. But in this time, yeah, like your leader is bad, you all lose. So I kind of understand why there's infighting in the clan, but it still feels insane, right? Like infighting within the clan, but you're also fighting other clan is it's just endless fighting, basically. I mean, it's called the Warring State for a reason, right? Yeah, it's just what a mess, what a mess. Seriously, what a mess. And we're only at the beginning. Well, somewhat. Anyway, I'm gonna take a quick break before we watch the next one. Give me 5 minutes. As always, I shall be back. Let me give you some BGM. coming back. Okay, sorry for the wait, I am back. Okay then, let us continue. So, Takeda Shingen's first battle. We have gotten to Takeda Shingen. And my cat is happy.
Since their days as a branch of the once powerful Minamoto clan back in the 12th century, the Takeda had ruled over their province of Kai. By the 1520s, the clan was under the control of the ambitious daimyo, Takeda Nobutora. Nobutora had over the years come into conflict with many of his neighbors, clashing with the Imagawa and Hojo to the south and leading armies into Shinano province to the north, which was home to many lesser clans. Yet Nobutora would never gain much from his campaigns. In 1531, a coalition of clans from Shinano had endured enough and marched on the Takeda. However, Nobutora would stand strong against this opposition, defeating their short-lived alliance. Although he was not yet in the clear, several years later, in 1535, the Hojo and the Imagawa would join together to attack into Kai. Facing invasions from two large and powerful clans could have meant doom for the Takeda, were it not for Uesugi Tomouki, who would march on the Hojo, having taken notice of the absence of Hojo Ujetsuna.
Wait, isn't he the one that, waited for the enemy at the river but they got behind him?
Who was leading his forces against the Takeda. Ujetsuna would be forced to break off his invasion of Kai in order to double back and deal with Tomouki. This would just leave the Imagawa to fight the Takeda in a war which would yield no ground to either side. The conflict would end 1 year later in 1536 when the daimyo of the Imagawa clan, Imagawa Ujiteru, died of an illness without naming an heir. Immediately, his brothers, who had been living as monks, returned home and began gathering forces to seize power for themselves.
The amount of time they're monks, and yet they still have ambition, clearly, Like, being a monk is just, preparing to come back and try to be a powerful leader.
Throwing the clan into a civil war known as the Hanagura disturbance.
Disturbance are back.
Both of these men bore the names of monks. Baigaku Shoho was the legitimate heir and had every right to rule the Imagawa clan, yet his half-brother, Ginko Itan, attracted followers due to him being the older of the two, and that his mother had been from a prestigious family.
Of course.
Nobutora and Ujetsuna would both ally with Baigaku Shoho, helping him win the war against his brother, reuniting the fractured Imagawa clan.
It is the Gekokujo time, so stuff like being older or more prestigious doesn't matter.
Having won, Baigaku Shoho would take the name Imagawa Yoshimoto.
Did he really look like this? I mean... Yeah.
Looking to strengthen this new friendship, Nobutora arranged for Yoshimoto to marry his eldest daughter. This new union between former enemies shocked Ujetsuna, leading to increased tension and soon open war between the Hojo and Imagawa clan, as Ujetsuna would begin launching assaults into Sagura. With his southern border now secure, as the Hojo and Imagawa began their fighting, Nobutora turned his attention back to his plans to invade Shinano province. In November of 1536, Nobutora set out against the Hiraga-controlled fortress of Unokuchi, accompanied by his young son Takeda Harunobu, who just recently came of age. Eventually...
But let me look at this description. I really need to know, where is all this out from? It has to be from a game or something, right? source artwork, the samurai portrait used from the Nobunaga Ambition series. Oh, that's what it is. Okay. I've heard of this game, yeah. They're like Total War, but without the battle simulation. I guess it's more like, just the map itself kind of thing. It's it's not really the kind of game that I think I'd really enjoy, but yeah, okay. I know about Nobunaga's Ambition. Actually, I think on my other account I've got a video about one of the game, like a 5-hour video talking about it or something. I like, retrospective videos about games that I don't really plan to play. Okay, I see. That explains that. Everybody is way too, most of everybody is way too handsome.
Takeda Harunobu would come to be known as the great Takeda Shingen.
Oh, okay.
But right now, he was just a boy who had never seen war. Takeda forces laid siege to Unokuchi for 34 days. Yet as the defenders held firm, Nobutora's determination began to fade. And as winter set in, he ordered a withdrawal back to Kai. As they began their sad journey home, Harunobu would be ordered to take up the rear guard for the remainder of their march. However, he was still eager to prove himself. Early one morning, he ordered his men to break off and march back towards Unokuchi, where they found that the Hiraga clan had completely dispersed their army, believing the Takeda siege to be over completely, only leaving 100 men in the castle. Harunobu decided to split his forces into 3 groups, leading one on an assault of the castle, while the other 2 formed ranks outside. This worked to fool the defenders, as they could not determine how large the attacking army was. This led to the fall of Unokuchi, and Harunobu's first victory. He would return to his father Nobutora.
It's crazy, this kind of thing, right? So there's a lot of important figures and leader in history where, yeah, like, he was clearly lucky there, right? Like, that's a crazy lucky break. It could have been just him getting there, and, the castle is still massively defended, so he doesn't even have a chance to attempt to take it, and that's it. His destiny doesn't happen. But he got lucky, and it starts everything.
With the head of the commander of Unokuchi. However, Nobutora would not give any praise to Harunobu, instead scolding him for the stupidity of his actions. This was most
It's not stupid if it works.
likely because Harunobu's younger brother Takeda Nobushige was often seen as Nobutora's favorite son, and most likely the one who would be named heir to the Takeda clan instead of Harunobu. However, even though Nobutora refused to celebrate his son's heroic victory, in secret many of the Takeda commanders admired Harunobu's actions.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, what can we...
Okay, that's it. Okay, well, Mr. Shingen is there, yeah. Definitely looking forward to learn more about him. Again, I forgot to mention that I've played too is Samurai Warriors, the spin-off of Dynasty Warriors, based on, Samurai Japan and Sengoku Jidai. And well, like the story in that one is a very over-the-top quick recap of stuff from the Sengoku Jidai. I do remember, like, some mission where you play as Takeda Shingen, and, I think he was famous for using, like, gun regiments, maybe? Am I wrong about that? Maybe.
learn from this? Throughout the earlier...
Okay, I guess we can pass the recap as always. Let's go. Next episode on 9. The Battle of Kunonai. Or Cavalry. Kunonai.
As we have seen by now, East Central Japan was a hotbed for major conflict as larger clans continued to further their ambitions. By 1535, Mikawa, a province which the Imagawa held much sway over, yet was largely ruled by the Matsudaira clan, briefly fell into chaos after the murder of the Matsudaira daimyo Kiyoyasu by members of the Abe family, resulting in the Battle of Idano, in which the Matsudaira would avenge their fallen lord. However, This left the 10-year-old Hirotada in charge of the Matsudaira clan, fearing an impending attack from the hostile neighboring Oda clan of Owari province.
Oda named the Oda look small. They really don't have a lot of territory, huh?
The Matsudaira would ally themselves to the much stronger and more influential Imagawa clan to the east. This would work to secure a future for the Matsudaira clan. Yet by the mid-1530s, we can see that the Imagawa were facing the threat of the Hojo clan, as the new alliance between Imagawa Yoshimoto and Takeda Nobutora had caused hostilities between the Hojo and Imagawa. The Hojo clan at this time were seen as a key regional player in east-central Honshu, having rapidly expanded their territorial holdings in a relatively short amount of time, causing them to be the true standout clan in the early years of the Sengoku Jidai. Ujitsuna, the second head of this new Hojo clan, was bound and determined to push the clan to greater heights through increasing its power and maintaining its stability. He even went so far as to gain the support of the common people who lived under his rule, as he often financially supported various temples and shrines across his domain, as well as establishing a rather reasonable tax rate. Throughout this period of war, he found a rival in that of Uesugi Tomouki, who was the daimyo of the Ogegeyatsu branch of the Uesugi family, a clan which held most influence over Musashi province. However, in 1537, while Hojo forces were busy fighting the Imagawa, Tomouki would die, leaving his son Uesugi Tomosada the new head of the Ogegeyatsu Uesugi. As the Ogegeyatsu recuperated from the loss of Tomouki, Ujitsuna would take advantage of their weakened state and attack their castle of Kawagoe, located in the center of Musashi province. Faced with a strong and unified Hojo assault, the castle quickly fell, and Hojo forces came to hold the majority of the power in Musashi. The seizure of Kawagoe caused a cadet branch of the Ashikaga clan, known as the Koga Ashikaga, of Shimosa province to the east, to begin fearing an impending attack by the Hojo, as they rightfully considered themselves to be the next target of the Hojo. It was then that the daimyo of the Koga Ashikaga, Ashikaga Yoshiaki, would be approached by the daimyo of the Satomi clan, Satomi Yoshitaka. If we remember previously, it was the Satomi clan that was responsible for the burning of Kamakura back in 1526. Since then, their relations with the Hojo had been abysmal at best. Thus, the Satomi and Koga Ashikaga would form an alliance in opposition to the Hojo, gathering an army of combined forces up to 10,000 men strong at the castle of Konodai. 1 year later, in 1538, Ujitsuna would launch his invasion of Shimosa, leading an army of 20,000. Yoshiaki would be advised by the Satomi clan to take the initiative and attack the Hojo before Hojo forces crossed the Tone.
I do wonder if it will be worth it to watch the King and General video eventually, because it's not really covering the tactical side of the battle in this series. I guess it's more the overall event. So maybe I might go back to the King and General videos once we finish the main series, I guess.
Negawa River. However, Yoshiaki was overconfident and instead waited for the
I just kind of like to know some of the details of how the battle went, you know.
Hojo army to meet his near Konodai. With the battle finally joined, the Hojo immediately began pushing the Ashikaga forces back, resulting in Yoshiaki finally losing his confidence. Yet the Satomi army, under the command of Yoshitaka, and more Ashikaga samurai under the command of Yoshiaki's son, Ashikaga Motoyori, waited for their opportunity to strike out from Konodai Hill. Once the Hojo had pushed deep enough in, the second unit attacked the Hojo, descending down from the hill. Unfortunately, the attack was a complete failure, causing Yoshitaka and Motoyori's forces to become quickly engulfed by Hojo soldiers. As the Satomi began to break and rout, Motoyori held his ground, personally slaying up to 30 Hojo samurai before finally being killed. A messenger
That's a crazy kill streak.
would soon deliver word to Yoshiaki that the counterattack had failed and that his son had been defeated. This caused Yoshiaki to burst out in rage, spurring his horse forward and leading a last-ditch all-out charge on the Hojo line. The violent assault succeeded in shattering the Hojo momentum and pushing Hojo forces back. For a moment, it seemed that Yoshiaki would manage to actually rout the Hojo army from the field, achieving an unexpected victory. However, when Yoshiaki paused briefly to catch his breath, a Hojo archer would recognize him and put an arrow in his chest, killing him and causing the Ashikaga forces to break. The Hojo had won the battle at Konodai. Ujitsuna would seize the castle and his men would continue to pursue the routing Satomi forces down.
That was a good detail of the battle, so I guess I complained too early about like a lack of detail for the battle. This was good enough.
The Boso Peninsula. 3 years later, in 1541, after building Sonji Temple to honor his father Hojo Son, and rebuilding much of Kamakura, including the great Hachimen Shrine, Ujitsuna would finally die, leaving a legacy as legendary as his father's. His son, Hojo Ujiyasu, would take control of the clan and would one day come to be known as the Lion of Sagami.
Cool name.
So, what can we learn from this?
Okay. Well, this guy, why is he missing a teeth? I mean, it was probably an historical fact, right? But it just makes him look funny compared to everybody else. Huh? I mean, most of everybody is, in a more straightforward and some way, right? So, a bit of a contrast. Huh? Okay, man. Oda very small. What else can I say? I mean, battles are interesting. Again, I wonder if there's any manga, but like Sengoku Jidai, really based on the history of it. I'd love to read something like that with like more in the middle of battle kind of part, It's really mighty interesting. Alright, next episode, the Siege of Gassen.
By the late 1530s, there really hadn't been a major battle yet in the West. Although wars were waged and clans were destroyed, this was for the most part being done without the same level of massive military action that we have been seeing in the East. However, that was about to change. The aging Amago Tsunehiza had stepped down from his role atop the Amago clan, passing leadership to his grandson, Amago Haruhiza. By 1538, we can see that the Amago clan under Haruhiza had continued their expansion, becoming a powerful contender in western Honshu. As they maintained their eastward push, claiming control over Mimasaka from the weakening Yamana clan. The collapse of the Yamana clan had been at hand for some time now, as their fall can equally be attributed to the same types of power decline and infighting that had also been plaguing the once great Tokugawa clan. As new clans like the Urakami began popping up to seize control over provinces where the Yamana had once held great sway. Yet, Haruhiza's eastern ambitions would not be his only priority, as by 1540 he turned his attention to Aki province, which was heavily under the influence of the Mori clan, ruled by Mori Motonari. As we can remember from episode 5, roughly 20 years earlier, the Amago and Mori clans had become allies in defiance of the powerful Ochi clan, who the Mori had been former vassals of, with Amago Tsunehiza even marrying one of his daughters to Mori Motonari. However, it seems this union was not meant to last, as Amago forces began pouring over the border into Aki province.
I would say that 20 years in this context, in the current like mess of everybody fighting each other and the clan fighting in and of itself, 20 years of, this kind of alliance is really not that bad. I think they had a good run. I mean,
their initial goal was to take Yoshi.
Like in history, there's stuff like Treaty of Eternal Peace between countries that don't even last a couple of years, right? And they called it Treaty of Eternal Peace. So, I think this is pretty good.
Shida Koriyama Castle, stronghold of the Mori clan and the seat of Motonari's power base. In the past, at the Battle of Arita Nakaide, Motonari had won victory over an army 5 times the size of his own. Now he would be forced to hold firm once again, commanding an army of 8,000 versus the Amago 20,000. This time, he would attempt a different approach. Motonari knew that the Ochi clan would not sit idly by and allow the Amago to simply claim Aki province. Thus, Motonari elected.
I wish games were more balanced. Like I keep praising the praise of, Sakura as a mod, but even then, in that mod, most of the time, number difference are too much to overcome. Even if you have like very high level troop, because you level up your troop, they can start as like peasant militia or like, like Ronin and very low level samurai or something. As you do battle, you can level them up in different branch to be different type of samurai, from like horse samurai, gunners, archers, and stuff like that. But it's not the most balanced game, Mount and Blade, and so even if you have like an army of really like high level troops and using like interesting strategy, more often than not, at least in the Sakura mode, if the enemy has like 200 troops more than you, it might be enough to like overwhelm you, even if they're like low level troops or something. That's why I say that the Sakura mode isn't fully finished yet, because it's kind of unbalanced. Let's not even talk about Siege. I mean, Siege, obviously, the advantage is always to the defender, right? Like if there's 600 defender, you need at least 1,000 to attack, or you're gonna lose. But yeah, Sakura is not the most balanced yet. I was also playing like a Europe's 1700 mod, and in that one you can actually do, like, this one is a bit more balanced in terms of like, you have guns, so you do gun formation and volley of fire, and in that one you can actually do like big number difference. Like if you're outnumbered like 2-1, the gun formation can like mow down the charging cavalry, and you can actually overcome that kind of odds. But in most of like, the Bannerlord mods, it tends to be that like 200-300 more enemies than you. Even if they're low level, you're overwhelmed. That's one thing I hope they can fix with Sakura, like a much better balance for like the difference in troops and stuff like that, because as we've seen, like a lot of the battles so far in the Sengoku Jidai, it's possible to win like 2-3-1 battle.
To hold out within the walls of Yoshida Koriyama Castle. This forced Haruhiza to encircle the fortress and burn the surrounding town in attempts to break the will of the Mori defenders and force Motonari's surrender. Motonari remained determined, launching night raids against Amago supply trains, ensuring the attackers would not have an easy siege. Finally, in November of 1540, Ochi forces would arrive to aid the Mori clan, with the Ochi army under the command of an aggressive samurai named Sue Harukata. With their combined forces, the Mori and Ochi were able to defeat and rout the Amago army back to Izumo province. This would be the beginning of a renewed friendship between the Mori and the Ochi. 1 year later, in 1541, the former patriarch of the Amago clan, Amago Tsunehiza, died. Viewing this as an opportunity to strike at a weakened foe, the Ochi and Mori would now launch their own attack against the Amago. Ochi forces under the command of the Ochi daimyo, Ochi Yoshitaka, and Mori forces under the command of Motonari combined to form an army of 30,000, marching out to seize the Amago citadel of Gasan Toda. However, Amago defenders managed to successfully hinder the advance of the Ochi Mori army as it invaded Izumo, resulting in most of their momentum being lost by the time they reached Gasantoda. Nonetheless, a siege of the citadel would begin and last until 1543. Amago forces under Haruhiza would ultimately withstand the combined might of the Ochi and Mori, eventually riding out to break their ranks.
Really?
This caused a mass rout to occur as the Ochi and...
That's probably like the most utter defeat you can get. Not only did you fail to win the siege, but the defenders broke out and routed your army. I don't think you can fail a siege that bad. That's kind of crazy.
Mori forces both tried their best to flee, resulting in massive casualties. Even Motonari would almost be captured by the Amago. Ochi Yoshitaka, on the other hand, would never recover from this defeat. He had never been much of a military man in general, and after the devastating loss at Gasantoda, he had lost all desire to continue expanding the Ochi clan.
Fair enough.
For years, this passive behavior, coupled with an obsession with the arts and courtly pursuits from Yoshitaka, would go on and on, angering none other than Sue Harukata, who only wished to continue invading the Ochi clan's enemies. For in this age of war, Harukata knew that the Ochi clan would not survive without a continued strong military presence.
I guess that's kind of the thing, yeah, like, you can't just be neutral, you can't just be, like, resting with the territory that you have. The thing is that, like, the current state of Japan at this time is like, yeah, I mean, you know, being a pacifist doesn't pay, yeah, like, the only way to survive is to expand, get more territory, more troops, get stronger, to the point that, you know, other clans aren't a threat anymore. So, like, even if you aren't into the idea of, you know, conquering other clan, you kind of have to. Otherwise, you're just waiting for someone else to destroy you. It's kind of a weird situation.
He knew that one day he would have to move against his master in order to secure the clan's future. So, what can we learn from this?
Okay. Oh, my god. Well, very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I didn't think of it like that at first, but yeah. Things have escalated in a way where, you know, it's possible that, like, half of the clan here don't actually want to, like, do war and conquer territory, but you kind of have to. It's kind of become a situation where, like, you know, you just have no choice, because if you stay as you are, you just will eventually be swallowed up, as others will, you know, continue conquering, get stronger, and eventually you'll just be like another part of their conquest. It's just kind of like an insane, self-perpetuating kind of system, yeah. Just no choice, like, no choice. You have to join this madness. And for now, again, Northern Honshu is still kind of chilling. It feels like. Okay, well, great stuff. I think we'll leave it at this one for today. I do have stuff to do. But yeah, very interesting start to the Sengoku Jidai. I already feel like I've learned a lot more than I ever knew about it. Many names that I'd never heard of, many battles I'd never heard of. Some names that I had heard of, but, you know, like, I just knew the name and that's about it. I had no context on any other detail. Yeah, it's even more of a mess than I realized, and again, we're still at the beginning. There's 60 plus episodes, we've only watched 10. I'll try to watch more next time. I think so. But yeah, just super interesting. Yeah, it does make me want to replay more Sakuro or read some manga. I might try to find if there's any manga. There's probably some manga on the period, but I mean, like, less historical fiction maybe. More actual history, potentially. I don't know. Could be good. I think actually there might be one. Years ago I remember, like, stumbling upon one, and I told myself I'll read that one day, and then I think I never did. Or maybe I'm, like, confusing it with the Three Kingdoms, and I'm not talking about Kingdom. Yeah, maybe it's another one. I think there was, like, a more accurate Three Kingdoms manga that's less well known than Kingdoms. So I don't know if I'm confusing that with the Sengoku Jidai one. it's possible. Nonetheless, good stuff, yeah. Obviously, the Shogunate videos so far, yeah, I'm into it. As I always say, I can be kind of finicky about like what kind of history channel I like, but I like this. Good narration, maybe, you know, music is too loud sometimes, but that's the detail. Good use of art, and, you know, yeah, I'm liking it. So, no big thanks again for the introduction. But yeah, tomorrow I'm finishing season 3 of Oshinoko. Come watch if you want some reaction to that. Probably next week we'll continue the Japanese story, maybe Monday. Like, subscribe, comment, チャンネル登録よろしくお願いします. And I'll see you guys next time. See you.